Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you're new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you. And once again, before I get into it, thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed. And if you want to support my channel for free, just watch as many ads as you can, or maybe click on the ads and then click back to the video. Thank you. And okay, I'm gonna start with today's topic, which is finally, some of you will say, the Venus ruled Nakshatras and the partner, basically as described by the Venus ruled Nakshatras. And once again, if you don't know if this video applies to you, I'm going to link a video in the description where I talk about how to find the nakshatras that are the most relevant to describing your partner/spouse archetype based on your natal chart. So you might want to watch that video before you get on with this one. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. First of all, Venus. I want to start by saying a few things about Venus, some of which maybe are going to be a little bit controversial, but I have to tell it like it is. Now, first of all, I don't want to be sounding too threatening already. It's not, it is a feminine energy. But what I wanted to say has to do with this idea of Venus being a feminine energy. I really think that Venus is actually not purely feminine energy. It's more like, Venus is actually even in Hindi, or the Eastern religion of Vedic astrology, the one that Vedic astrology has been based on, Venus is actually the head of a bunch of demons. I think they're called asuras, and he is called Shukra. And Venus is actually more about materialism than it is about feminine energy. And I think the reason why Venus has been assigned to femininity is because of the fact that, Venusian energy is about not wanting to waste time on conflicts. This is how Venusian people, let's say, are different from Mars people. Mars people, they go straight forward. They go through obstacles or over obstacles. Whatever is in their path, they will take the straight line, basically. Whereas the Venus person is always gonna try to avoid things like conflicts, like too much effort. Basically, Venus is gonna go for the path of least resistance. And this is why I think this Venus energy has been assigned to femininity. But what Venus dominant people actually have is a form of cultivated femininity. These are people who have taken seduction and charms to the status of art. So they are people who apply the philosophy of you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So it's not like they're so feminine and so compassionate and so understanding that they don't want conflict. It's more like they believe in fight smarter, not tougher. You know what I'm saying? Fight smarter, not harder, basically. So that's something that I wanted to say, to just get out of the way from the beginning. Really, and I have heard this being said, and I've also read it in several places, that the only purely feminine energy in astrology is actually the moon. Because the moon is about empathy, maternity, nurturing, blah, blah, blah. Venus is more of a sly kind of feminine, is more like, Venus is feminine because it's convenient, that kind of thing. I mean, obviously there is more to be said with regards to the fact that Venus signifies the wife in a man's chart, but I'm not going to get into that. Like I said, this is a long philosophical subject. But this is something I wanted to say. But aside from all that, Venus is about the physical body, materialism. It is about beauty. It is about wealth, enjoying everything that the physical body has to offer, the five senses. It's about sensuality. It's about harmony. It's about cooperation, win-win situations, negotiations. It's about human psychology. This is one of the reasons why, Venus-dominant people oftentimes will do well in professions to do with consultations or anything to do with consultations, whether it's legal, whether it's therapy, whether it's, fitness instructors, whatever. Anything that has to do with one-on-one situations and human nature is something that a Venus-dominant person will be good at. Also, of course, arts in all its forms. Any form of art, really. Visual art, dramatic art, things to do with food to some extent, things to do with jewelry, cosmetics. Everything in the so-called beauty industry is connected to Venus. And Venus-dominant people tend to be materialistic, and they tend to be very focused on the finer things in life. And like I said in the beginning, they don't want to expand too much energy fighting. So if they are given the chance, they're always going to take the easy way out, The worst case scenario about Venus is that they can be a little bit mercenary, like gold diggers are a good example, women who are only loyal as long as you provide them with a good life. That's an example of a Venus energy being really used in a negative way. Best case scenario, they can be very refined, they can be very artistic, very cultured, good at negotiations, good at maintaining the peace, so they can be very, very charismatic as well. Definitely good looking. Whether it's natural beauty or whether it's cultivated, they tend to know how to make themselves look as attractive as possible. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to say about Venus in general, just so you get the overall idea. And now, let me get into the first of the Venus-ruled nakshatras, which is Bharani. Now, Bharani spans from 13 degrees, 20 minutes to 26 degrees, 40 minutes Aries. And it literally translates into, quote, the bearer, or the woman who bears. And this is really interesting because there is a theme with this nakshatra being connected to maternity, okay? But I'm gonna get into more details in a little bit. First, the general details, okay? So, yes, it translates into the bearer. The symbol is, this is even more telling, the female reproductive system. So another description that I read literally said the vagina, but yeah, the female reproductive system is the symbol for this nakshatra. The animal yoni is the male elephant, which is interesting because it's the male elephant. Obviously, the ruler is Venus, I mentioned that. The nature is Manushya, or human, and it also is a fierce nakshatra, which is interesting. Fierce nature means basically, your basic personality and whatnot, which is interesting. See, because already there are some contradictory energies here. It's a Venusian nakshatra, and yet it is, ruled by the male elephant, and it's a fierce nature. Okay. The gender of the nakshatra is female. The tree is Emblica officinalis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that well. The color associated, or the lucky color, is red, especially blood red. And related planet Mars, the ruler of Aries, because this nakshatra falls in Aries. And the presiding deity is Yama, who was the god of death. And so, a few things that I want to say about this nakshatra. So already you see the contradiction here. It's ruled by Venus, which is supposed to be a feminine energy. However, it falls in Aries. And you're going to see this, all of these nakshatras fall in fire signs. Which fire signs are the most masculine energies there are. And Bharani is no exception. It's in Aries, it's a fierce nature, and it's ruled by the bull elephant. There's a bunch of things to be said about this. Bharani is a very deep kind of energy. When you think about this energy, you have to think first and foremost about inertia. Literally think of an elephant. Elephants are the biggest land animal. So there is an energy of, there's a feeling about this nakshatra of heaviness. And you're going to see this heaviness, like you can see it, you're going to see it on the screen with the examples that I posted. These people seem like they have, sometimes they seem or they look like they have the weight of the weight of the world on their shoulders. They seem like they're being crushed by heaviness. Oftentimes they carry this emotional heaviness, this brooding kind of energy. It's really interesting. To me, Bharani is almost kind of like an untamed form of feminine energy, almost like Lilith in tropical astrology. Almost, not exactly. It's different, but they're kind of similar themes there. Because Bharani is not. It is feminine energy, but it's undomesticated. It's kind of like the she-wolf energy, the feminine, the uncontrollable feminine energy, the power of creation and destruction all rolled up in one. That's what Bharani is. And there is a theme with this nakshatra being connected to death and birth. Obviously, you can kind of see that because, connection to the female reproductive system. But yeah, there is a feeling. So these people have a potential to create unbelievable things. Like they can, they have the potential for greatness, basically. This is also the nakshatra that precedes Kritika, which is the birth star of power. So it's almost like this is where, this is where the pregnancy has started, so that to be born in Kritika almost at least that's how I think about it. And this is really, it's a very deep and dark sort of energy with this nakshatra. You have people that can seem very quiet and nice and almost goody two shoes on the surface. But inside, there's a deep well of emotions. There's a deep history. This is another thing that I wanted to say about this nakshatra. This nakshatra really is one of the most vengeful energies out there. Because, again, think of the elephant. Remember those, videos that came out in the 90s or the 2000s where you saw elephants that had escaped from the circus and they were hunting down their former trainers and basically killing them? There was an incident I very clearly remember in the 90s where an elephant escaped and I think killed 5 people, including his trainer, because he was pissed and he was an elephant. And this is literally the energy that you have to bear in mind when it comes to Bharani Nakshatra. These are people that can hold grudges. They can hold grudges for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I'm not exaggerating. These are people that, they'll hold it inside. Nobody will know that these people are still angry about whatever you did 20 years ago. And as soon as they get the chance, they will take their vengeance. And people are going to be like, what was that about? And this is really something that occurred to me when I was doing the research for this. And this is something that I think will help you understand the energy of this nakshatra. These people have very deep emotions, Even if on the surface they come across as peaceful and almost undeterred, how do you put it? Unruffled, they unbothered, they seem like zen, and both the men and the women, they can come across as really innocent and really kind of goody two shoes. But deep down, these people are probably carry a lot of emotions. They're full of emotions, and there's a deep well there. There's literally the embodiment of, still waters run deep, that kind of thing. It's almost kind of like, and again, there's a connection with this nakshatra with to do with birth. So birth is something that is painful, but it's also, well, it's kind of like pain, but then followed by the joy of creation. And this is actually a theme that tends to exist in these natives' lives, that they tend to go through a lot of painful things only to create something wonderful out of it later. So obviously this is a nakshatra that can create a lot of artists, a lot of creative people in general. And the interesting thing, and I talked about this in the beginning, is that it's also equally fascinated with death. So you're going to find a lot of people here, and when you think about it, there's a great symmetry in life and death, because we are born from the mother's womb, and then we are buried in the earth. So the earth's womb takes us back in a way. Of course, unless you're being incinerated, but let's say you're dying somewhere where nobody's going to incinerate you. Basically the earth reclaims you, right? So, and this is, or another way that you can think about it is, how abusive mothers tell their children, I made you, or I brought you into this world, I can take you out. Like, I laughed way too hard at that. Okay, but you know what I'm talking about. So this is kind of like, it's that energy. It's kind of like the tough feminine sort of energy. It's like the, and this is another thing about the tough feminine, it's kind of like how hunters know that there's nothing more dangerous than a mother, an animal mother. Okay, I just got flashbacks from Full Metal Jacket. But you know what I'm saying, an animal mother, like a bear with cubs or a lioness, so females in nature, they're the most dangerous when they're protecting their young. And this is the energy, again, these people, they're extremely protective about the people they care about, especially, of course, their family, their kids, and all that. And this is the most likely to, these people can have outbursts of anger when it comes to these things, So again, they can seem totally placid on the surface, and then all of a sudden they will, charge at you because you hurt someone's feelings, or I don't know, because they remember something you did 25 years ago. It's a really kind of a dark energy, a dark feminine energy. Another thing that makes me think about when I think about Bharani is kind of like the overripe fruit, the fruit that is so ripe that it's about to rot. That's kind of the energy. It's like succulent and creative. This is how these people are brimming with creative energy, that they're just, they're just brimming over. They need to express creativity. And because it falls in Aries, of course, these people are really pretty tough and go-getters, This is why I said it's pretty paradoxical, and there is a dichotomy of energies going on. And let me think, what else? Let me check the notes. Another theme, and this is going to get a little bit darker now. I'm not going to get into the whole, energy, the whole story of the mythology surrounding this nakshatra, but very quickly there was a theme of incest going on with this nakshatra. So apparently, Yama's sister put the moves on him or something. There's a kind of weird, how these, gods things were going down. A lot of it was really creepy. So basically there's a theme here with incest, and I'm not saying that, people who have this are gonna whatever, but there could be things like, a crush on a cousin or crush on an uncle or some weird stuff like that. You could see that, or people marrying their cousins. That's likely to happen, especially if the dispositors of the seventh house, are falling in Bharani, either in the D1 or the D9. There could be. So there is a theme. But here's another theme that also comes from this little gross story, is that there's also a theme of very high morality, conversely. Why? Because, so Yama was propositioned by his sister, but very much, put his foot down and absolutely said no. And then on top of that, I don't know, there was this theme of Yama was basically, became this kind of the mortal that, became a god by ascension or something like that. So there is a very strong theme here of high morality, which is kind of counterintuitive, again, especially if you think of Venus as connected to materialism, hedonism, overall mercenary activity. There is a theme here, of these people being uncorruptible. And they have a very, very, very strong sense of justice, which makes them really good at being judges, or being anybody involved in the legal system, but especially judges, being the person who decides whether someone was right or wrong, having the last say, giving the verdict, that kind of thing. So people involved with giving verdicts in general, deciding justice, so they have an innate sense of extreme justice here, and they really have a very strong backbone, and they're very hard to corrupt, despite what they might come across on the surface. Another thing, let me think. Right, so yeah, I did go through all of this. Strong sense of justice. Also has a strong ability to manifest whatever they want. They're very courageous. They have a great deal of strength and endurance and a strong backbone. And they also are very artistic and materialistic and clever, and also very loyal to the people they care about, to their families and friends. And possible careers, you're going to see people connected with anything to do with the reproductive system, of course. You're going to see obstetricians, is that the right word? I think so. Gynecologists, maybe people who have to do with hormones, like female hormones especially. So anything to do with birthing. Could even be maybe connected to birthing animals, or multiplying animals, or reproduction of animals, I don't know. Could even have to do, again, by the same token, with the other side of the spectrum, which is death. So you're going to see a lot of people who are interested in being undertakers, or doing autopsies, like Dr. G. I just got an image of Dr. G. Doing autopsies, anything to do with the whole burial thing, but especially things to do with finding the cause of death. That's definitely something that would interest them. Or death in general. There seems to be some of you might think that, okay, this sounds like a lot of this maybe sounds like some Ketu energy, if you've seen the video that I made about Ketu. But it's not really the same thing, because Ketu is about spirituality. These people are just fascinated with death. These could be people who are morbid from a young age, they're gonna have a dark sense of humor. They will really relish in these subjects that a lot of people will find taboo, to do with death, especially death, just the process of dying, of what happens when you die. They're going to be interested in all of these things. Would be interesting to see the chart of that. I think there was a doctor who measured 60 grams or something. There was even the title of a movie. There was a doctor who measured exactly how much the body weighs immediately after death, and he came up with a sum that he said is how much the soul weighs, or something like that. It would be interesting to see that guy's chart, because I wouldn't be surprised if he had strong Bharani influences. But pretty much, yeah, anything to do with death, interested in causes of death, in embalming, mummies, tombs, you name it. Death. And also, to a lesser extent, ghosts, also the spirits of the dead, cemeteries, stuff like that. This is stuff that will naturally interest them. And other potential, which are not so dark, other potential career paths could be things to do. Oh, again, I should have mentioned fertility specialists. Again, like I said, anything to do with the female reproduction. Could be Oh, of course, homicide detectives. Of course, that's a good one. Judges. I said that. Also involved with hotel industry or catering. Veterinarian. Kind of mentioned that. Could be also firefighters, surgeons, photographers. Well, all of the Venus-dominated things, but this is kind of a darker side of Venus, you know. So they're gonna be like, maybe they're gonna be like taking photographs of tombs or the dead, or I don't know, occultists, positions of secrecy, earth-related professions, like especially things to do with the resources of the earth, things like earthquake scientists or volcano experts, things to do with the natural forces that are within the earth. Okay, some famous people: Carl Jung, Edgar Cayce, Elton John, Imelda Marcos. I have also put a lot of pictures of celebrities on the screen, and also, since we are at the topic of celebrities, and I did mention this loosely in the beginning, you will notice that all of these people tend to have this kind of another thing that, yeah, this is something that you want to look for in your potential partner. They tend to have this kind of a drooping eye, or like, even if their eyes are not droopy, they tend to have a kind of sadness about them, a kind of brooding energy, and you can see it on their faces. You know, they have this kind of a dark, deep energy. You would say scorpionic, but not really. I mean, not if you have an eye for it. I mean, it's not exactly scorpionic, you know. It's kind of a brooding heaviness, you know. And they seem very mysterious. That's something that I think also Lana Del Rey, I don't know if Lana Del Rey, I'm pretty sure, also has like Venus conjunct Rahu in Bharani. So she also has this kind of like, to me, her overall look is really kind of the overripe fruit energy, you know, this kind of like dark glamour princess that is world weary and all this. But you know, she is a fascinating case study because she has a lot of dark energies in her chart, including Saturn in the first house, I think. But I digress. Yeah, but pretty much if you look at the pictures of the people, especially since Moon shows the face, you know, so people with Moon in Bharani, and I've noticed this when I was doing the photos, editing the photos a little bit, I noticed that they have very similar energies. They tend to have similar facial expressions. The eyes tend to have this kind of severe, serious look. Maybe not severe, but serious, brooding, emotional. You know, they tend to have similar energies, you know, facially. The moon rules the face, and the ascendant is the body and the face. But the moon especially will show the facial features. Okay. This is what I wanted to say about Bharani. And now, moving on to the second nakshatra, which is Purva Phalguni. Purva Phalguni, which spans from 13 degrees 20 minutes to 26 degrees and 40 minutes in Leo. It literally translates into something like the fan or the bed. Oh no, I think it translates into the reddish one or something. The reddish one. The symbol is a hammock or a bed or a fan. And by fan, I don't mean like fan as in musical fan. I mean fan that you use to cool down during summer months. The Gana is Manusya or human. The Yoni is the female rat. Bird associated is female eagle. The tree is the Ashoka tree. I found this really interesting. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. The caste is priestly. And what else can I say? Nature is fierce or severe. Okay, so here we have another very fascinating manifestation of a Venus-ruled nakshatra. This nakshatra is really quite possibly the most sensual energy in the entire 27 nakshatras. It is really, I mean, it is the union of Venus and the Sun, right? Because it's in Leo and it's ruled by Venus. So there's a lot of glamorous energy here. There's a lot of sensuality. Even the symbols show that, you know, the bed, the hammock, the fan. this nakshatra is all about enjoying life. It's about taking it easy. It's about relaxation. It's about enjoying things. It's about hedonism. It's, yeah, I mean, just relaxing. It's about pleasure, you know? And this nakshatra, what should I even start with? Because there's so much that I want to say about it. But I'm going to say this right off the bat. This nakshatra I have noticed so often being connected to a tendency to becoming objectified, especially when it comes to women. I've actually read this in several articles, and I've seen this other astrologers say that apparently this nakshatra shows up very frequently in the charts of porn stars or strippers or any kind of, well, you know what I'm saying, any kind of profession where you have to show a lot of skin and you are comfortable with your body and all this. Another description that I've read from the old text basically said that this is also called the energy of the courtesan, or the lover, quote unquote, which is very interesting. And if you watch the screen, you're going to see a lot of examples of very good looking people having this nakshatra. But it's not just about being good looking, because it's about having a certain kind of beauty that is sensuous and very attractive. Women tend to have, you know, big pretty eyes and nice skin and, you know, full lips and all this stuff. And I really have seen it so often that especially women with these nakshatras, but even men, tend to be objectified. And it's most frustrating to the natives, because the natives are not just a bunch of dumb bimbos. Obviously. The natives of this nakshatra, they're actually, this nakshatra is actually very much a go-getter kind of nakshatra. So, despite the fact that they might look very attractive in a way that, you know, really incites people's imagination even, I really stress this because this nakshatra, I've seen it so often, makes a person very kind of effortlessly sexy, you know, like sensuous without even trying. And they oftentimes are oblivious to the way that they come across, which obviously lends to them getting unwanted attention, especially if they also tend to maximize their physical qualities, which they tend to do because this is a nakshatra of beauty and glamour, and they really enjoy putting on makeup and, you know, getting their nails done and going to the hairdresser, putting on perfume. They really love all this stuff, you know, the beautifying, the glamour. And they tend to really sometimes even be downright disrespected, which is really sad to see. But this is the kind of really narrow-minded world that we live in, where people can't believe that people can be also good-looking and also have substance. But oftentimes these people are actually very diligent. They're very honest and straightforward in going after what they want. They don't like to play games generally, even though they can easily charm their way through things because they're so charismatic. And they also, on top of being naturally charismatic, have a kind of instinctive understanding of human nature, which makes them, on the one hand, good for professions that have to do with, again, counseling of all forms, but can also make them manipulative, you know, give them the ability to be manipulative if necessary. And there's also a theme with this nakshatra of being very materialistic. Especially early on in life, they will be drawn to all the finer things in life. You know, they will be drawn to the glamour, the pleasure, success, money, power, fame, all the material things that they want to experience in this world. And what happens is, after a while, either because they become saturated, so once they have, you know, experienced enough hedonistic pleasure, they start to get bored, you know, or because of frustration of never getting enough hedonistic pleasure, they start to switch towards spirituality. And actually, many of them end up becoming very spiritual, which is really interesting. So they start out being very driven by material desires, and then they start, towards the, let's say, later half of their lives, depending on where the nakshatra sits in their chart, they might start to become really, really spiritual. They may go through, becoming suddenly celibate after jumping from one relationship to another and dedicating themselves to a spiritual practice. I actually really laughed when I came across the fact that Madonna, none other than Madonna, has moon in Purva Phalguni. I mean, she is a perfect example sent by God. Kidding. But she is a perfect example because she started out in her career obviously being very brazen, very straightforward, absolutely using her sexuality, her body. She was outrageous in the beginning of her career, for displaying her sexuality, for really just, making the most of her looks. I mean, her entire image was very cultivated. She would do these shows where she was, she even had, funny enough, if I remember correctly, had a show where she was like basically playing a courtesan on stage, one of those old style, like 18th century French, wearing a fan, using a fan and like fluffing herself. I'm pretty sure it was like an MTV award, something I vaguely remember seeing 100 years ago. But she had a bunch of these things. She had like a lot of videos where she was really exploring, sensuality and whatever, and really outraged a lot of people. And then, when she was around I remember in the 2000s when I was still reading Glamour magazine, I would read about her and her interest in Kabbalah. And I think she even converted to Judaism, or she converted to Buddhism or something, some religion. And also about how she was addicted to yoga, but I very distinctly do remember that something about Kabbalah, so she was like going to classes or something, which is very interesting because, again, she was someone who started out obviously in life being very ambitious and very driven and, determined to achieve everything she wanted materially, and then suddenly started to become more spiritual, and more interested in spirituality and cultivating spirituality. And also, funny enough, she had a song called Material Girl, where she was recreating the famous scene that Marilyn Monroe did, I think, in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, where she was singing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. And Madonna recreated that scene, basically saying something, material girl, whatever. The song was Material Girl, the song. But all of that stuff is so Purva Phalguni. This is another thing. This nakshatra is extremely artistic. So you could have people here succeeding in a wide variety of artistic fields. Acting, singing, dancing. Also, you could see anybody in the beauty industry, like I said, so things to do with cosmetics, with anything, spas and beauty parlors and hair and makeup and nails and everything to do with feminine beautifying and all this stuff. These are areas that will naturally interest them. On a deeper level, these people actually tend to be very cultivated. They start to really enjoy, they enjoy reading, they enjoy cultivating themselves. They will enjoy going to theater, going to good movies, and really developing their higher artistic sense. So they won't just be like, mindlessly hedonistic. That's what I'm trying to say. Another thing that I can say is, because of their nature being described as fierce, though, funny enough, they actually also can be very short-tempered. So despite the fact that they tend to be mostly nice and happy-go-lucky, and they tend to be very good hostesses or hosts, people who can really make others feel at ease and really entertain. So they can be very charming socially. but they also have a short fuse if they're made to be angry, and especially because it falls in Leo, has to do with their, their little ego going on, their little sense of pride. So if you make them feel attacked, offended, disrespected, that's when they tend to show their ugly side. They'll start to become angry, potentially even downright destructive, towards others, because they feel threatened or offended or, hurt in their ego, basically. They also love to travel, and they also tend to be really generous, especially, obviously, with the people they really care about. And they also have a very good chance of becoming famous or achieving massive recognition in any chosen field that they will focus on. And they're also very freedom-loving. And this is definitely something you have to take into account if you're reading this for your potential partner. Because obviously, especially when it comes to the men who have this nakshatra, they're very freedom-loving, so they will tend to become claustrophobic very quickly in a relationship, and you need to take that into account, and you need to give them some space. And also, they tend to be very attached to their family. Another thing that I wanted to say about their tendency to be objectified. Also, Michael Fassbender has moon in Purva Phalguni, and I very distinctly remember, again, there was this video that I came across ages ago when he starred in an X-Men movie with James McAvoy, and supposedly the internet, or a bunch of people on the internet, were doing fan art depicting him and McAvoy in, basically as gay lovers. And this is about being objectified. Again, Michael Fassbender has moon in Purva Phalguni, and like I said in the beginning, the risk here to be objectified is also true for men. It's especially true for women, but it's also true for men. I've come across some men who have this placement natally, and oftentimes they tend to be disrespected by other men because, well, in my humble opinion, because of jealousy. But it's because they go through the indirect way of doing what they want. So these men are very good at charming others, relying on relationships, relying on, recommendations, being nice. So other men, will tend to be like, this guy's not a real man, because he's not, straightforward, he's not, tough, whatever. Other men, some men. This is just something that I noticed, okay, and I thought I would throw it in there. But this is what I wanted to say. So I saw this talk show where, McAvoy and Fassbender were both on the sofa, and the host was showing them some of this fan art that depicted them as gay lovers, and Fassbender was very obviously hurt by the fan art, even though you could tell, both of them basically retained their composure. But I thought that was funny, and I remember that when I was doing the research for this video, just as an example of, people tending to objectify. I guess people who are good looking tend to be objectified, but this nakshatra in particular has a high risk of being, projected upon when it comes to other people's fantasies and whatnot. Just a small parenthesis. And the potential jobs that you could see these people getting involved with could obviously, like I said, any artistic job, anything to do with the beauty industry, with dramatic arts, with fashion, fabric production, fabric commerce, also psychology, anything to do with negotiation or administrative studies, and also government jobs, because this is also co-ruled by the sun being in Leo. So yeah, government jobs are also a thing. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I wanted to say about Purva Phalguni. And now, moving on to the last but not least of the Venus ruled nakshatras, Purva Ashadha. which spans from 13 degrees 20 minutes to 26 degrees 40 minutes Sagittarius. It also translates into the former invincible one, or the former unconquered. And some symbols for this: elephant tusk, winnowing basket. The animal is a male monkey. The ruling deity is Appa, a water deity of cosmic waters, deified as a god. The Gana is Manusya, or human. All of the Venus ruled nakshatras, if you've noticed, are Manusya. And the mode is balanced. The gender is female. The disposition, once again, is fierce and severe. Hitler had a lot of placements in Purva Ashadha. Just thought I would throw it in there, just so you know what you're dealing with. This is not a happy-go-lucky cookie cutter kind of thing, because even though you would think, oh, it's a Venus rule nakshatras, it's all about baking cookies and tea parties. No, not really. Like I mentioned, this is the Vedic perspective of Venus. And okay, so where was I? The color associated is black, painted black by Rolling Stones. Related planet, obviously Jupiter as a ruler of Sagittarius. Because of the deity, there is a theme here of, so again, without getting too much into the entire mythology behind it, there is a theme though of the energy of a river meeting the sea or an ocean. So there's that rush of energy here. And also, funny enough, because of this nakshatra being connected to the deity that it's connected to water and marine stuff. Like, you could see, so if you're reading this for yourself or whether you're reading this for your partner, you could, your partner, let's say, if you're reading this for your partner, could be someone who's really interested in everything to do with marine life. They're going to be people who are interested in like Jacques Cousteau documentaries, or maybe they want to be marine biologists, maybe they work as marine biologists, or marine transportation, marine engineering, telecommunications, you name it. They could be in the Navy. They could definitely be in the Navy because this is a warlike nakshatra, but I'm going to get into it. But there's a connection here with everything marine. They love stuff. Even if they don't work in the field connected to marine activities, they will be very drawn to the sea, to water activities, to maybe they will enjoy imagery, like waterscapes, like maybe they another thing is like this nakshatra is really connected to mermaids. So they would maybe love the legend of the mermaids, or mermaid imagery. So, keep an eye out for these things, like maybe when you visit their place and maybe you see some statues of mermaids. Remember that it comes from the Purva Ashadha influence. There's also a connection here to water and sexuality, fertility. Actually, all of the Venus ruled nakshatras are connected to sexuality, because Venus rules like basically the bodily fluids, like the sexual fluids, like the ovum for women and the sperm for men. So there is a connected, but especially with this nakshatra, because it's also because of the water and fertility and all this stuff, there's a connection here to sexuality. And planets funny enough, planets in Purva Ashadha will tend to show what energizes you. So if you're getting this reading and you have a planet in Purva Ashadha, that planet is going to show what will put the spark back into your life, which is an interesting perspective, but I found this to be true. Obviously, it also depends on the house placement, aspects, but especially the planet, the planet that sits in Purva Ashadha. So let's say if you have Mars in Purva Ashadha, you need to be more assertive, you need to be active, adventurous, blah, blah. All the things that Mars signifies in order to, get out of your funk or to reignite the spark in your life. this nakshatra is also connected to a declaration of a battle, preparations for war. That's the part that I wanted to go to. This is the part where, again, I go back to the fact that Hitler had 3 planets in this nakshatra. I think 3 planets, which is, again, massive contradiction here in energies when you think about it, because, you know, Venus, what does Venus have to do with war, you would think? Well, like I said, the perspective of Venus in Vedic astrology is very different from the perspective in tropical astrology. Venus is not the fairy tale princess. Basically, both Venus and Mars can be soldiers. The only difference is that Venus would be a mercenary and Mars would be someone dying for glory, or, you know, for an ideal. But yeah, so this nakshatra, these people can be very warlike. So they feel the need to, like, prepare for war, for danger, for battles. They might feel, you could even find people here with placements in this nakshatra that are into, like, weapon engineering, or, again, military strategies, or involved with the military. The symbolism, the elephant tusk, has to do with status, you know, and power, yeah, obviously. So this is a very ambitious nakshatra, you know. There's a great desire here for achievement, and not just, you know, they tend to become successful. But there's also a tendency for these people to like, be defeated. Like, you know, when they do become defeated, it's spectacular. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they lose something, it will be, like, at a very close call. You know, like, you know, they'll make it to the final round and then be taken out in the final round, but they will still be remembered for their bravery and their, you know, power and whatever. Which is not to say that this nakshatra will automatically mean that you're gonna lose whatever. You know, these people can actually be very high achievers. You know, this is a very ambitious energy. You know, it's a very driven, a very disciplined kind of energy, actually. Also being co-ruled by Jupiter, it's broad-minded, it's expansive, you know, it's thinking in the big picture, and going for things that are above oneself. And there's also a connection to do, because, again, also connected to the water symbolism, there's a connection to regeneration, purification. So if actually, I should have said this in Purva Phalguni as well. Purva Phalguni also is connected to being a little bit of a cleanliness freak, and I think to some extent all of the Venus nakshatras have this thing about, you know, wanting to keep their space neat and clean. But Purva Ashadha takes it to the highest extent. You know, they want to purify stuff. They want everything to be antiseptic. They might actually become OCD, you know, about, I mean, they're probably having a rough time in these times of the apocalypse right now, you know, during the plague and stuff. They're probably going to be constantly packing, you know, some hand sanitizer and 10 masks, and, you know, they're going to be really focused on maintaining cleanliness, to put it like this. So they could be OCD to some extent, kind of like the character of Howard Hughes in The Aviator, you know. And however, it's not all dark. Before I get too dark, their nature is actually quite optimistic, because, again, it's the influence of Jupiter. Their nature is quite optimistic. They're very independent. The problem is that they can actually be a little bit too optimistic, in the sense that they think that they're invincible. And the problem, the problem is not actually losing, but the problem is that they could actually, not see it coming, or like they don't prepare for the possibility that they might lose. which is something they should take into account. You know, what happened? They should have a plan B. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, what happens if I fail at my plan? What happens if things don't work out the way that I want? That's something that they should take into account, because oftentimes, you know, they're being so optimistic and so passionate about going after what they want. They put everything into a plan A, and if the plan A goes south, they're going to be stuck in limbo for a while, not realizing what they should be doing. Another thing, because of their connection to the god, the Appas, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. There's a connection to power, there's a connection to fluidity and adaptability. They also have the ability to inspire and to energize other people. However, they have a natural tendency, actually, more than the other two feminine quote unquote, nakshatras ruled by Venus. They tend to be aggressive and confrontational by default. So that's something they need to watch out for, because they could end up, you know, shooting themselves in the foot before they even take off. You know, whether this is having conflicts with authority figures or, you know, in the corporate field, whatever it is, they need to watch out for that. They shouldn't let their mouths, you know, blabber on without thinking about what they're saying. They also can develop a reputation of being really warlike, basically, for starting arguments, starting battles, and also on the plus side, being fearless. So these are definitely people, like, if you see people with Jupiter in Purva Ashadha, I'm not saying that this is a negative thing, but these people can really just lay it all out on the field. They can just, you know, put everything into their faith. They can fight until the end, fearlessly, you know, whatever it is that they're fighting for, obviously. But especially Jupiter, because Jupiter is the planet of faith, and it's also, being in Sagittarius, is going to be strong, right? Right, small parenthesis. They can also be very artistic, like the other two Venus-ruled nakshatras. Very good looking, you know, can stand out in a crowd. Can also be very influential, you know, so they definitely have the ability to influence others. It can also be seen by the water energy again. It's flexible, and it's also about subtleties. Water is adaptable and subtle. So they definitely have a power of potentially influencing others. So some of the general characteristics can be popular, polite, on the surface at least. They can definitely be very intelligent. They actually love confrontation, okay? So this is something that maybe they should take into account. They should find a positive outlet for this. They love comfort at the same time, so they're very, you know, like the other Venus dominant nakshatras, they love the pleasures of life, the comfort, the materialism. They're also going to be really attracted to water. They can be very supportive, they can also be very courageous, but at the same time humble. And they also will tend to become wealthy in life. So this is good to know. And they also love fine cuisine, so they kind of going hand in hand with, they love the fine life, but they especially like fine cuisine, so they like cooking, they like eating. And also, the funny thing about this nakshatra, which I probably should have mentioned before, but I'm going to make a little parenthesis, there is a theme here with Purva Ashadha of prolonged celibacy, which contrasts with the fact that it's a very sensual energy, and it's also actually a very fertile energy. But these people can very easily impose celibacy on themselves. And I actually, again, I'm sorry to keep using Hitler as an example, but I remember watching a documentary about him where there were all these rumors about his sexuality. There were people saying that he was basically asexual, that he had never slept with anybody. But one thing that is for sure was that when he was during his time in the First World War, he was the only one who never, philandered. Like, he had a reputation for being very uptight and very kind of, professional, quote unquote. I don't know if I can say professional. But basically, you know what I'm saying, like single-minded. So his energy was very much concentrated on certain things, and he almost seemed to think of relationships as a distraction. And this is something that is a theme with this nakshatra. So they can very easily stay celibate for very long periods of time. But at the same time, they're very fertile. So they do have an ability to have a lot of children, for instance. But they, might choose to stay celibate for whatever reason. Usually to dedicate themselves to a cause or whatever. Okay. Another thing is that they can be very good managers. They also tend to be truth seekers and disciplined employees. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so this has been pretty much it. Already a really long video. I hope you have enjoyed it. And once again, if you have, please like, subscribe, watch the ads, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.